Well, it's April Fool's, so we'll apologize about that stream. For some reason, the gremlins were in, so we'll give you a recorded version of this. And of course, it's going to be a good one because I think it's going to be breaking down some insights around Bitcoin and whether or not the ETFs could be starting to slow down. So stick around for that. I do want to thank our sponsor, iTrust Capital. We'll just cut right to that. And iTrust Capital, if you guys are looking at trying to do long-term holding on crypto right now, one of the ways you can do it is through IRAs. And the cool thing right now that's happening with iTrust is you still have the benefit of being able to get into iTrust Capital and take advantage of an IRA tax benefit before the 15th of April. So that's something to check out. If you guys want to use our link, it will give you a $100 funding reward. All you have to do is click the link down below, and it helps the channel. All right, so let's get into it. And the point was BlackRock right now, Fidelity now holding almost 400,000 in Bitcoin, the number of Bitcoins worth over 27 bill. So not bad for two financial institutions that weren't holding anything in January. That's a pretty significant move up. You look at other things that are playing into this right now. Crypto overall funds rebound with nearly 900 million in net inflows last week. This, of course, came from the previous week of downturn that we had been seeing. And I think a lot of people were concerned that was that going to be kind of the run? Remember, the halving is still coming, just a couple of weeks away. Could we see some volatility before all of that? A couple of things have started to show as volatility could be resonant. If you were tracking Bitcoin along with a handful of other altcoins this weekend, you probably saw some of that volatility. And I think that's one of the things you have to kind of just consider. Is this all relevant to what's happening in the ETFs themselves? Another thing on point right here, which is this topic, highest monthly close ever. 5 things now, if you look at your Bitcoin outlook for the week. A couple of points is that we made history on March 31st. So this is the first quarter of 2024 that ended the highest close ever seen. So that is a positive. And then remember, old resistance not giving up. In terms of that, we've already started to see a little bit of retracement, both on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a handful of altcoins, including Solana, which clipped over 200 and then slipped back down to about 182. So big movement in terms of volatility just over the weekend. Stage is set now for some potential volatile moves as Q2 gets underway, and I think that will have not only the halving, but I think also we're going to start to see some of the pressure from a macro position as well. I want to go to a clip real quick. This is Pomp talking about where Bitcoin is today. Listen in.
On one end, it's like a risk-on situation. On the other, it's arguably supposed to be a hedge, and it's very hard for me to get around the idea that it's both. Then there was the halving that's coming, so that's sort of an idiosyncratic one piece of the puzzle, but not something that's like an ongoing piece, so you could argue it is in certain ways. And then you have the ETF, which was also sort of an idiosyncratic moment in time. So put that puzzle together for us.
Yeah, Bitcoin is the most exciting asset in financial markets because of what you just described. Right now, I think one of the most interesting parts about this is if you go and you talk to someone on Wall Street, why are they buying it? They're buying it because they want the price exposure via the ETFs. But if you go and you talk to someone maybe in a country where they actually are worried about somebody seizing their assets, they're buying Bitcoin because they literally want to make sure that they can hold on to the economic value. Now, we just hit a really important milestone before the halving. We just had the highest weekly, monthly, and quarterly close for Bitcoin.
Right.
And so the last 4 times that that's happened, Bitcoin has appreciated at least 300% through the rest of the bull market. Right. Doesn't mean it's going to happen again, but to have that happen before the halving, it's kind of like the demand shock happened. Now we're going to have the supply shock. Right. And so it's hard just to see how the price doesn't continue to go up.
All right, so Pomp hits on a few points there. I think some of the things he is right about, and that is Bitcoin one of the more exciting assets out there? Because you do have a lot of variables on how people look at the asset. Some people look at it as a store of wealth. Some people look at it, hey, this is the only way we can transact cross-border. Some people look at it as a nation state in terms of replacing a currency. Then you have the investment side of it, which is everything from BlackRock, Fidelity, et cetera, on the ETF side. So the flexibility of the asset is pretty significant. And he goes into a little bit more on this same interview where he starts to speculate around inflation. And this is where macro plays into it. Listen in.
So I just got back from South Africa, and I would ask anybody who was around, very wealthy people, folks who are middle class, folks who are at the bottom of this. And I said, do you own any Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Almost to a T, they said no. This is my own thesis. I think 80 to 90% of the folks who are buying this thing are buying it because it's a risk on, the train is leaving, or I think the train's leaving, and I want to get in on the action. And that there's another 10 or maybe 20%, maybe, who have this sort of inflation hedge idea that around their own exposure to their own currency.
Look,
I don't think it's a 50-50 thing. I don't think it's a... You see what I'm saying?
Well, what you're calling out is just a societal trend, right? We have become a society of gamblers. If you think about it, we have zero-day options. Now we're more than 50% of options trading. We have sports betting, right? We have meme coins trading like 1980s boiler room, penny stocks. This is all happening. And so, again, why is that occurring? The dollar has lost 25% of its purchasing power in 4 years. We have $1.1 trillion of credit card debt. We have 43 million Americans that have federal student debt. The average balance is $37,000. People have lost hope. They do not have hope. How are you supposed to live in a country where it is cheaper to rent than buy a home in 50 major metros?
And I think he hits on it right there, is that there's only a few alternatives out there where you can kind of outpace what's been happening from an inflationary standpoint in the economy. And Pop hits on them all. And I think that's the one factor. The other factor is this is so early. When you think about what Andrew Ross Sorkinson is saying, he's saying, well, there's not really adoption yet. Well, you're right. There was an adoption of the early stage of the internet, of the early stage of the iPhone, of the early stage of social media. You go down the litany of innovations that have really taken off. That's why I think if you're watching our show, you're still early. If you're still in 2024 and you're in, coming what is now Q2. So there's a lot happening here. Kobe Easy kind of hits on it right here. Home price growth, crushed wage growth. In 85, the median income was 23.6 and the home price was 83.2. Just think about that for a second. Where now the median income is 74K, 3X, and the price of a home is $468,000. That's 5X of where we are right now. It means it's roughly 6.3 years of household income just to buy a home, which he's exactly right. This is not going to be something that changes. The only way out of this, and we already know this because of the debt spiral that we're in, is going to be going through these risk assets. And I think that's the point that's getting into a lot of people's heads right now. Inflation now reading along the lines of what we want to see. This, of course, coming from the Fed. New inflation report released Friday along the lines of what we think might be the case. And this could be good where rates kind of pull back. This will be another thing I would think politically that would be good for the Biden administration. But it is a bumpy path to a central bank's goal of 2%. I still don't know if we're going to see that too. It's not as low as most of the good readings that we got in the second quarter or second half of last year, but it's definitely more along the lines of what we want to see. So this is, I guess in one way, this could be, are we nearing what was, we thought, a slowdown economically? Because we've already seen that. And will we see some energizing of the economy going forward here? Question is, are those just bumps or are they something more than bumps? Is progress on inflation going to slow for more than 2 months? And will it hold? Because I think that's the bigger factor here, is a lot of people say, okay, we are correcting, but is it going to hold through the next cycle? And I think that's the key that everybody's looking at. All right, so there's a couple of things that you have to look at here, and many will look at the de-dollarization. So what do you say? Okay, well, how will the U.S. be affected when BRICS comes in and says, hey, we're going to completely move away from the dollar standard? And BRICS is getting bigger and bigger with the number of countries that are involved, but it does move to threaten the cause of hyperinflation in the U.S. by flooding the market with dollars. If we don't see these dollars being used in international trade, guess what? The U.S. is going to start to have to kind of drink its own Kool-Aid because of that. 3 major U.S. sectors that will be hit hard is going to be banking. You already know the situation there, finance, and then tech and fintech. So all of these are playing into what could be a very, very big triple threat going forward. So just be thinking about that long term, whether you're considering that, from an investment standpoint, or you're just looking at, kind of keep your own head around what is happening out there for your family. But Larry Fink of BlackRock, he also hits on this, actually just expressed his concerns on the U.S. ongoing debt crisis, suggesting it could be the end of the dollar's dominance. That's a pretty big statement coming from a guy like Larry Fink. I want to go to one more clip here. This is Pomp going a little deeper on, well, kind of whether or not Bitcoin is the future. Listen in.
Pick your asset for the greater fool theory. Is NVIDIA? People, trains leaving the station, I got to get on it.
I don't disagree.
Pick your meme stock, pick your, your commodity, cocoa, pick whatever you want. I mean, there's no doubt that when there's liquidity everywhere, that it's going to chase assets and things like that. But I don't think that because that's one of the reasons it goes higher doesn't undercut the fundamental case for that asset. That you have to, on a case-by-case basis, that
is the fundamental question. And we don't, and only, 5, 10, 20 years from now we'll know the answer.
I think there are people that do understand it, that don't have that question about the fundamental underlying.
There are people who have certainty. Whether they should or not is a question.
Another key piece is Bitcoin is a decentralized organization that has no marketing team, right? And so price is the marketing of Bitcoin. When the price goes up, speculators come in. Right. But what ends up happening is when we get those drawdowns, some of them stick around and become kind of Bitcoin believers. Some of them do leave.
I mean, Netflix is a great asset. It's either worth $800 or $170.
Yeah, so, I mean, the market speaks, and I think that's the thing that we have to watch out for right now, because remember, a lot of what we've seen in this run-up has been fed by these ETFs. The one concern right now is that these ETFs got their first real slowdown of inflows, and I think that's the factor here. So spot ETF frenzy cools down. Is Bitcoin investors, or are Bitcoin investors shifting a little bit of a focus now? I don't know. How are you guys playing this? Is this something that even you're worried about? Because the having it being coming, we haven't seen this kind of adoption in past cycles, and it did just fine. Will this be the one that starts to bring in some of those, general investors, people that may never have invested in Bitcoin in the past? Or is this finally in a position now where these ETFs start to settle down, level off, and really don't have an impact on Bitcoin's price coming down the pipe? Tether's still buying, though, almost 9,000 Bitcoin, pushing its reserve 75,000 Bitcoin. That's probably a bullish signal right now. The other thing that I think is bullish is when banks continue to do their deeds, and that is continuingly to get distrust from the societal nature of what people look at in terms of these banks. And it's a problem that we've had for so long. And I think this is the factor that now starts to shift the psyche, especially of the millennials, coming into this next cycle of investment opportunities that are out there, whether it's meme stocks, they mentioned. You look at, what's happening with the cocoa markets. You're looking at what's happening within the evolution of gaming, where we're going to see NVIDIA and what we're going to see in AI. All of that, I think, is leaning away from the traditional finance sector. That's the one that you guys have to watch out for. So what does this mean for Bitcoin? I think what we're going to see right now, Bitcoin trading at around, as we filmed this, around 69K, after it had a nice little run up to around 71. So I think sideways stability right now through the halving and possibly some volatility, whether it's over the next week or 10 days. And we may see some adjustments here. This could be that launch pad that starts to see that correction in the market. And whether you're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, which is now trading at 3470, down almost 5% on the day, and then even Solana, which had clipped up over 200 over the weekend and is now trading right at 190. So holding a little bit of consistency there, but it's definitely one that's going to be watching for sure. All right, if you guys are not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get into that. It's another great place to get additional content. We do additional drops. I do some additional content over there that doesn't come in here on the show. And of course, catch me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.